So we'll get in one more session before lunch. And if you want more of Dr. Maitland, I know we all do. I think I just heard it announced this morning that the recent Bendy Bodies podcast with Dr. Maitland as a guest was just released this morning. So feel free to get more from there. But yes, for this next session, building on now all of that clinical research and discussion about mast cells and mast cell disease, we'll hear from Molly Griggs, also at the Medical University of South Carolina. Molly works with the Norris Lab at MUSC, where she supports research operations and program coordination. Molly's background spans research, public policy, and organizational leadership, contributing to multidisciplinary work in connective tissue disorders. Please join me in welcoming Molly.
Good morning. I'm thrilled and honored to be here to talk about the patient-scientist model of research that we're pioneering in Dr. Norris's lab at the Medical University of South Carolina. Maybe? Yeah. Awesome, thanks. So my name is Molly Griggs. I have no disclosures to make about my conflict of interest, but I am the program coordinator at the Norris Lab, and I also am the director of our patient scientist initiatives. I make a note that I have no disclosures and conflicts of interest to make because it is important for you to know that I have a personal interest in this. When I walk in the door in the mornings, I come in as a professional. I am there to do my job. But I am also a patient with HEDS, and I'm the mother of 3 teens who have varying diagnosis of hypermobility disorders. So my work sits right at the intersection of that, and that is really the lens through which I view the work that I do. I'm actually in this position because I am a mom of patients. This is my daughter, Charlotte. Her story is a familiar one. Most of you in the room, whether you are a patient, a parent, someone working in this field, will know this story. When she was 14, she started having unexplained headaches, unexplained fatigue, nausea. She couldn't get out of bed. She struggled in school, started to have surgeries to fix things, and eventually had to leave school. And it was at this point that we really began to lose hope. But someone opened a door for us. Her biology teacher had gotten her master's in Dr. Norris's lab, and when she heard that Charlotte had been diagnosed with HEDS, said, "Oh, let me introduce you to some researchers who are working in this field." And so Charlotte started working in the Norris Lab when she was 14. Dr. Norris opened his doors to a child who had not yet finished biology, had never held a pipette, but who was so excited about the research. I was the mom that was driving the 14-year-old to the lab. She could only work for a couple hours at a time because of her health. And so I would drive her down there and then just sit around and wait like parents do. And started outside the building and then in the hallway and just kept getting progressively closer until finally I sat down with Dr. Norris and I said, "I really want to come play. This looks like so much fun." So my 14-year-old taught me how to extract DNA from saliva, and I started working on the DNA registry as a volunteer. All of this happened because someone listened. Her biology teacher listened to her and cared about what she was going through. Dr. Gensimer and Dr. Norris listened to her interests, and Dr. Norris heard that she needed something in her life. She needed a way to be able to contribute meaningfully at a time when she had lost what feels like everything to a 14-year-old. And this idea, listening, is really at the core of what we do in the Norris Lab. We believe that patients have expertise that is important for us to hear. They know their disease history. They live not in an organ system, but in a body where it all happens at the same time. And so they see patterns and symptoms that physicians who are looking at one part may not see. They're experts in navigating the healthcare system, and they understand rare symptomatology that they actually end up being experts in and seeing physicians who don't understand it as well. But these patients also long for community. These are lonely roads that we walk, and it is important for us to be able to walk alongside people who are moving in the same direction we are. And because they've experienced a lot of medical care, a lot of treatments, there's a lot of hopelessness, despair, concern, loneliness that we see day in and day out when we talk with these patients. One of the ways that we used this opportunity to listen to patients was actually in a global survey, and I'll talk about it a couple times during my talk. But one of the things that we started to see was that joint manifestations here is really the hallmark of HEDS. But when we asked patients, what are the 3 most severe symptoms that you live with? They said chronic pain, GI symptoms, and autonomic dysfunction. Only one of those is considered in the diagnostic criteria for this disease. So what we began to see is that there's a mismatch with how we understand HEDS and what patients actually experience. So when you listen to patients, scientists and physicians have been doing that forever. They collect data, they take history, but it's a unidirectional perspective. So patients are subjects and they are providing the information to the scientists and physicians. So what we're working to do is change this model. And in this model, scientists listen to the patients and learn from them. They see the patients as an expert that they can lean on to problem solve when things get tricky. Physicians learn from the patients, and patients learn from the physicians. But more than that, to help patients truly become partners in this, we want to help the patients become those scientists and physicians. So this is the journey you're all familiar with. I'm not going to walk through it. If you've been in this field, you know it. This is also the scientist's journey studying EDS. When you start from an inaccurate assumption that this is based in collagen, that this is a connective tissue disorder, that it's about joints and skin, you're going to be looking in the wrong direction. And so we began to think, what if we bridged these 2 paths? And when we do, we came up with this patient scientist idea, where you take the lived experience and expertise of the patients, and you provide them with the scientific training that they need to work on clinically relevant investigations. You bring their passion and our research tools. And in doing so, you can really drive forward the translational research. So this is our patient scientist model. The key part is that patients are the experts of their bodies. They have lived experience that is meaningful. It's not a token, oh, we should listen to the patients. They have real expertise. You embed the patients within the research team with intention, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then you provide the training, structure, and support these patients need to be successful in the field. And when you do so, it creates the conditions for patients to be part of the solution. And I want to stop for just a second and point out these pictures. These are all patient scientists who have come through our lab in one way or another. These are just a handful of them. And so as I talk about this, I want you to know that every part of this is based in the people who are coming through these programs. So what does this model look like in practice in our lab? We have 2 formal programs for patient scientists. The first is our HEDS intern program. We call it HIP. It's a summer intern program, 8 weeks, designed for patients and people with close personal experience with the disease, so family members, friends, who are interested in going into science or medicine and are dedicated to working in the field of EDS. These are primarily undergraduate students. We have some who are high school students, very rarely. We also have some that are graduate and medical students. And they're here in the lab for 8 weeks and work on a portion of the research that we are doing. So our goal with this program is to bring in students and really give them the skills that they need, teach them the techniques, get them exposed to research, and provide them the support that they need to be able to get into the next level of their education. We started this in the summer of 2021. We had 4 interns. One of our interns is here, one of our initial interns from that summer. We had 25 applications for that first summer. That's a pretty big, 25 applications for 4 spots is pretty hard. We're doing year 6 now, and we had 134 applications for our 4 spots. So with the need growing, there were so many patients that we were having to turn away. And so a foundation approached us and said, we want you to grow this bigger. But we are a single lab. We are limited in space and the number of mentors that we have to provide for these students. And so we couldn't bring more interns in during the summer. So we decided to create a new program called the Visiting Scholars Program. And we actually have a few visiting scholars in the room with us today as well. But in this program, you come for a few days, and it's a very immersive program. You shadow the lab, you hear from the patient scientists, you learn about the research that we're doing, and have an opportunity to really begin to see where you could fit in to this field. It's usually 3 days. You would think that's not a super long time for anything important to happen, but I'll talk with you some about the outcomes that we see from this program. You can see our applications here. The first year we had 116. We were able to bring 15 students. We revamped the way that the program works, and I'll talk about that in a second. And so now we're able to bring, this year we brought 40 students in groups each month. So initially we were hoping to train about 55 patient scientists in the first 6 years. We are on track to have trained 150 by the time we finish with this summer's internship. So the way that we do this, most of our outreach is through social media. We have been fortunate to have a very wide reach on social media. There's a lot of interest in the work that we're doing. And so we promote this there. We hang flyers in physicians' offices. We put it on our website. And we really don't have to do much promotion these days to be able to get the students that are interested in this work. But one of the hardest parts is selecting students. How do you select 4 out of 134 students to be able to come join you for the summer? And our primary focus is on the program impact. Who of these students is going to have the most impact from this program? A lot of these students are going to get into graduate school no matter what. But there are some that need that extra level of support. They need more training. They need an opportunity to be in an accessible lab and gain the confidence to know that they have a place in this field. So our focus is always on how is this program going to help them drive this field forward in the future. During these programs in HIP, they have a wide range of opportunities since it's a longer program. Like I said, they work on the research that we're doing in the lab, but they also have an opportunity to do clinical shadowing with our physicians focused on EDS at MUSC. We have seminars with experts in the field, which is an incredible opportunity to get to sit down and actually talk with physicians and researchers about the work they're doing. And then they get one-on-one mentorship from a student, a graduate student, a research specialist, a clinical coordinator in the lab who can help them troubleshoot their projects, guide their work, and talk about graduate school, medical school, what it is that they are interested in going into. So the outcomes of this, I'll talk a little bit more about in a second, but one of the things that for HIP it does for the students is it allows them to have an opportunity to have data to present themselves. This is one of our interns, Shayna, presenting her summer research at a conference. We also have a wide number of manuscripts who have authors that are interns, and I think primarily interns. as authors on the papers. But more than that, what we are seeking to do is build a network of people in this field who are passionate about driving the work forward. We need more scientists who care. We need more physicians who understand the disease. We need more advocates and PTs and OTs out there working, and we need them to know one another so that they can work together. This picture right here, the first year of the program, I said we brought 15. We brought them individually for a couple days at a time. And then one time, these two right here ended up coming at the same time. Someone had to reschedule. And what we found was what I talked about at the beginning, the opportunity to meet another person who is interested in the same work that they were, who lives with the same condition that they do. That community meant as much to them as the opportunity to be in the lab. And so the next year we began to put together groups, and these groups are carefully selected to, they might be high school students 1 month, or professionals, or medical students. We group them so that they begin to network with the people that are going to be their colleagues in the field moving forward. So I want to introduce you to one of our visiting scholars. This is Taylor. She has a bachelor's in American Sign Language. She did have a minor in chemistry and biology, but not a lot of science background. She was working in the medical field as a communications facilitator for deafblind patients. But she came in January of 2025 as one of our visiting scholars. And after 3 days in our lab, she applied to be our clinical coordinator, moved herself from Portland to Charleston, because she spent 3 days getting an opportunity to see the impact that she could make in this field. She is now running our biorepository among all of our clinical collaborations that we have going on at MUSC, and I think Dr. Norris will talk about them later. But she's running our biorepository, which is building an opportunity for us to have patient samples that we are working with in the lab. She also works as a disability advocate and science translator on Instagram. She has a vibrant Instagram account where she's helping our science communicator get that word out to as many patients as we can so that patients are educated about the science that's coming out. She's working with physicians and scientists to ensure that we are working together to move this field forward. And this summer, she's going to get to be a mentor for our interns. One of the things that many of you may wonder is, how do you do this with this patient population? We have patients that are really, really sick who are coming into our lab. And so one of the things that we have to think long and hard about is how to make this an environment in which they can be successful. And this is important because 1 in 4 Americans actually live with a disability. But in 2019, only 4.6% of medical students disclosed that they had a disability and were able to access support services as a result. 10% of all of the disabilities are non-apparent or invisible, and that's a lot of what we live with. The only ways that many of our disabilities become apparent is when we use braces, mobility aids, things that show that we are not feeling good on the inside. And this is the most important piece to me. In 2021, physicians were polled, and only 40% of those physicians felt confident in their ability to provide care to disabled people. We need more people in the medical field who feel confident working with this patient population. And who better than these absolutely brilliant women and men, mostly women, but we do have some men. This population lives, this is from our global survey again, 99% of the respondents in our global survey who had HEDS reported having signs and symptoms of dysautonomia, orthopedic problems, 96% neurological problems. They are living with not just a single disability, they're living with multiple. And so we need to make sure that they have what they need to be able to succeed in science and medicine. So how do we do this? I'm going to let our interns actually tell you about it. Those accommodations did not happen automatically. We had to work for them. We had to work with the institution to get them implemented. We had to provide funding to get them implemented. But more than that, what Dr. Norris has created in the lab is a culture of flexibility. He understands that there are going to be some days when we can work 14 hours, and there are going to be some days where we can't get out of bed. And he allows us the flexibility to be able to show up in that way. And what we see is that when that happens, patients in particular, when they feel good, they're going to get the work done. And they are going to work harder and faster than a lot of others because they know that it's not always going to be that way. We also have things like a sofa. So if you need to be horizontal, Dr. Norris got tired of us laying on the lab floor. So he finally bought a sofa for us to be able to lay down on for a few minutes. We provide mentorship from full-time patient scientists who are doing this work day in and day out. And so we've figured out the hacks to be able to be at the bench, or how to use a neck brace in a way that allows you to not strain your neck when you're doing things. But the most important part is actually normalizing these invisible disabilities that we live with becoming visible. Normalizing wearing braces, normalizing using mobility aids, normalizing having a heat wrap around your neck and an ice pack on your head and wearing sunglasses inside, because that is what it took that day for you to be able to be in the lab. And by doing so, we're allowing people to show up the way that they are and be more effective and more productive during that time. My daughter once said her favorite thing about the lab is that when she walked in, her illness was the least interesting thing about her. And I think that that's so important because when you live with this all the time, it kind of consumes you. And so having a place where you can just exist, where nobody's questioning, like, oh my gosh, did you get in a car accident? What happened to your shoulder? You're just there with your shoulder brace and your neck brace, getting your work done. So I talked about, we have these two programs that we have, but we also have work that we do outside of the programs. 2/3 of our full-time research team are patients. This includes high school students, undergrads, graduate students, medical students, clinical coordinators, research coordinators. We run the gamut in there. And so because of that, patient representation exists at all levels of the research being done. We provide development. So no matter what age you are or what experience you have coming in, we have supports in place to be able to train you. Dr. Norris always says that there are two things he requires of the people in his lab, and that's passion and creativity. He can teach anything else. And so the patients that we bring in are patients who are passionate and creative, and the rest of it, we teach them. And the big thing is a lot of times there is token patient voices. There's a panel, there's a consultant that they're working with. We don't want to just make sure the patient voice is included. We want to actually change who is in the room creating the knowledge. One of the ways that we do this is by asking the question, what matters most to patients? This is a glass whiteboard. It sits right next to my desk. It's pretty big. And a couple summers ago, I challenged our interns to write up the questions that they had, because we were working on taking a big research question and like narrowing it down to a testable hypothesis. So I said, write your questions up on the board. I'll be curious to see what you have to say. And I came back the next day and the board was completely full. And we abandoned all hope of hypotheses, and we turned it into an opportunity for these patients to tell us what questions they have. So now, any patient that comes through the lab, whether it is a student or someone coming in on a tour, they have the opportunity to write their questions on the board. And these questions we actually look at, and they've changed the way we think about our work that we're doing. I have talked too much, so I'm going to have to skip really fast through a few of these. Right now, we're in the process of evaluating this model. Last summer, we had an intern who, for her intern project, took on evaluating our program. We want to see, are we actually achieving what we're setting out to do? And what we're finding is that we are. We have patients who have come from 37 states. The knowledge that they are receiving are going back to those 37 states. We are seeing the knowledge of this disease spread across the country. Of the patient scientists from our programs who have applied to graduate programs or medical school, 100% of them have discussed their work in the Norris Lab as part of their applications. 85% of them were accepted to the programs of their choice. We also find that this is changing the research, and I wish I had more time to talk about this, but I think Dr. Norris will touch on it later. In our global survey, one of the things that came out of it was the question, why is it that 70% of patients report triggering events after which they never get better? Why are the most severe symptoms things that are not necessarily related to their joints? And what we're beginning to find is that while the traditional view has been of structural problems, there is a neuroimmune aspect that we don't yet understand. And much of that has been driven by the patient voice. These are the numbers. In 6 years, we've had 600 plus applications to our programs from all 50 states. GPAs, the average GPA is 3.7. This year alone, we had 134 applications for our program, and we had to turn away 95% of them. We need more programs like this in more institutions because this is powerful, not just for the students that are participating, but for the research itself. It is changing the field. And so I want to leave you with one more story about our interns. This is Victoria. Victoria was a professional dancer. She trained at the Boston Conservatory, danced for 10 years, got diagnosed with HEDS, as many dancers do, and decided to go to a post-bac program at Columbia. She applied for our intern program and was accepted in 2022. Her patient science journey is exactly what we hoped for these patients. She brought her lived experience. We gave her the scientific training. She had never held a pipette when she walked into our lab. She was brand new. But she brought passion to her work. She was our first clinical coordinator and built the clinical collaborations that we are now beginning to work off of. She was the author on this global study, and she worked with a panel of patients to come up with the questions that were asked. And the feedback that we got repeatedly when patients took this survey is that they felt for the first time that someone actually understood everything that they were going through. She is now a medical student, and you would think that'd be enough. We got her into med school. She's going to go be a doctor, but she didn't stop there. She created a lunch and learn for all of the students at MUSC across the colleges, because right now HEDS is taught inappropriately to the students. And so we are working to change that. But in the meantime, the lunch and learn, they usually get about 30 to 40 people who come. We had 160 people show up to the lunch and learn to hear from scientists, patients, and physicians about what this disease really is. So patients don't simply have to wait for answers anymore. As patient scientists, they are helping create them. This does not happen alone, and I do want to take a moment. I know Dr. Norris has gotten pointed out a couple times today, and I apologize, but this work exists because of the hard work of many, but it is because he saw what could be possible, and he took a chance on something new. He doesn't just come in and tell us what to do. He has created a space where he brings people in and allows them to grow in their roles. He allows ideas to flourish, and he allows new perspectives to really take root. And in doing so, this field is fundamentally being changed. The Norris Lab is huge. We have a large number of communicators, but for me personally, the patient scientists that I've gotten to work alongside, they are the greatest joy that I have had in my life as a patient, as a mom, and as a professional to be able to work with them. So thank you.
No, we're getting very hungry, but we do have time for a quick question or two if there are. A sign that everyone's hungry, ready to eat, right? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, how did we fund this? Did we approach foundations? And the answer is we were very fortunate. This started out of a donation. It was the very first donation Dr. Norris ever got. It was unsolicited, and they said, be creative. And so it was enough to pay for a research specialist for a year or fund a graduate student for a year. But with it, we could fund 5 interns, and we could teach them to then go beyond and be those scientists and those research specialists. So that was how it started. The other foundations have heard about our work from various places and have approached us. There's always a need for more funding. That's a whole talk in and of itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.